The Golden Child and the Invisible Girl. I grew up in a weather-worn two-story house on the edge of a quiet town. The air inside always carried a mixture of laundry detergent and the heavy scent of fried bacon in the mornings. Our mailbox leaned slightly to one side, looking as though it too had grown tired of standing tall against the wind. Inside that house lived my parents, my twin brother Nathan, and me, Meera. People often told my mother that having twins was a double blessing. She would smile politely, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and reply, "Yes, they're quite a handful." But deep down, she and my father had already made a silent, devastating choice. They had decided which hand was worth holding and which one was meant to be let go. Nathan was the golden child. He was the one with the straight A's, the one my father proudly called our little prodigy. I was the girl who loved to climb oak trees until my shins were bruised, who would dribble a basketball on the driveway until the sun dipped below the horizon, and who couldn't resist bringing home every stray kitten I found shivering in the rain. My report cards were decent, but they were never exceptional. My parents spoke about Nathan's science fair ribbons as if they were Olympic gold medals, framing them for the living room wall. Meanwhile, my soccer trophies sat in the dark corners of my closet, gathering thick layers of dust, because Mom didn't want all that clutter on the mantel. The gap between us became a canyon on our 14th birthday. Nathan had a grand party planned in the living room, dozens of balloons, a 3-tier cake from the most expensive bakery in town, and every popular kid from our grade invited. My mother spent days meticulously planning his celebration. When I asked about mine, she sighed and said, "We'll do something small for you later, Meera. Let's focus on your brother right now." That later never came. It turned into a hollow nothing. My friends, sensing the awkwardness and the coldness of my home, picked me up that evening and took me for ice cream instead. I still remember the sharp, sweet taste of mint chocolate chip. It was the only thing that dulled the sting of being forgotten in my own house. Grandma Helen was the only person who truly saw me. She'd drive in once a month in her old blue Buick that smelled of lavender and peppermint. She'd bring me peanut butter fudge wrapped in wax paper and secretly slip a $5 bill into my palm, as if we were co-conspirators in a grand rebellion. "For something sweet, just for you," she'd whisper, her eyes twinkling with a kindness I couldn't find anywhere else. Those visits were the only oxygen in a house that was slowly suffocating me. The rules at home were ironclad for me. No friends over, no phones after 8 p.m., and all chores finished before dinner. Nathan, however, was allowed to bend them. He could stay up late, studying, disappear with his friends for hours, and my parents would simply turn a blind eye. I learned very early that I wasn't granted the same grace. One spring afternoon during our sophomore year, I downloaded a social media app on my cheap phone just to feel connected to the world outside. It felt like a small act of freedom, but Nathan found out within hours. He didn't confront me, he went straight to our parents. The explosion that followed was like a tornado ripping through our kitchen. My dad's face turned a violent shade of red as he threw my backpack against the wall. My mom, her voice trembling with cold fury, yanked the door off my bedroom hinges. "No privacy until you earn our trust," she declared. Standing there in a room without a door, stripped of the last bit of dignity I had, I felt like an inmate. Nathan hovered in the hallway, a small, dark smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He had learned exactly how to weaponize our parents' anger, and he was just getting started. The missing door was more than just a lack of wood and hinges. It was a constant gnawing reminder that I was always being watched. Every time I changed my clothes, I had to hang a thin towel over the opening, my heart racing at the sound of every footstep in the hallway. My room, once my only sanctuary, now felt like a stage where I was the unwilling lead in a play I hadn't written. Nathan, meanwhile, had become a master of the quiet nudge. At the dinner table, he would drop small, poisoned crumbs of information. "Meera seemed really stressed at soccer today," he'd say, stirring his mashed potatoes with feigned concern. "I saw her yelling at one of the younger girls. It was intense." "Meera," my father would bark, his fork hitting the plate with a metallic clatter. "Is that true? Are you taking your frustrations out on others now?" "No, Dad, I was just calling for a pass." "Don't lie to us," my mother would interrupt, her voice weary. "Nathan has no reason to make that up. He's just worried about you." I would look at Nathan, and for a split second, the mask would slip. Behind the worried brother facade was a predatory gleam. He wasn't just trying to get me in trouble at home anymore, he was starting to dismantle my life at school. By the middle of the semester, the atmosphere in the hallways changed. Conversations would die down the moment I walked by. My best friend, Sarah, who had shared secrets and headphones with me since 3rd grade, started sitting a seat further away in algebra. "Is everything okay?" I asked her one day by the lockers. Sarah looked down at her shoes, biting her lip. "I heard about what happened with your brother's science project, Meera. Why would you pour bleach on it? That's just mean." My stomach dropped. "Bleach? Sarah, I was at practice when he was finishing that project. I didn't even touch his project." "Nathan showed everyone the photos of the ruined papers," she whispered, her eyes full of a pity that felt worse than anger. The rumors grew legs and began to run. One morning, I walked into the girls' locker room and found "Monster" scrawled in black Sharpie across my locker. In the cafeteria, a group of boys started making angry growling noises when I passed their table. Nathan didn't fan the flames in public. He played the martyr. He would sit in the library looking sad and exhausted, telling anyone who asked that family is complicated and he just wants Meera to get help. He even showed up to school one day with a faint purple bruise on his jaw. I knew he'd done it to himself. I'd seen him pressing a heavy textbook against his own face in the mirror the night before. But the school saw a victim. To them, the bruise was the physical proof of every whispered story. The final blow came on a Tuesday. I was called into the principal's office. When I walked in, my heart stopped. My parents were already there, sitting on the leather couch. My mother was clutching a wad of tissues, and my father looked like a statue carved out of pure, cold rage. Nathan was in the corner, his head bowed, looking smaller than usual. Principal Miller cleared his throat. "Meera, we've had several reports from students and staff regarding your aggressive behavior toward your brother, and now Nathan has come forward with something very serious." Nathan looked up, his eyes brimming with fake tears. "I didn't want to tell them, Meera, but you almost pushed me down the stairs yesterday. I can't keep living in fear." The air left my lungs. "I wasn't even near the stairs. I was in the library with the librarian." "The librarian was at a meeting during that period, Meera. There's no one to vouch for you. But 3 of Nathan's friends saw it happen." I looked at my parents, searching for a glimmer of doubt, a spark of "we know our daughter better than this." But all I saw was a final, chilling verdict. "We're done, Meera," my father said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Pack your things. You're leaving this house tonight." The silence in the principal's office was heavier than any shout. It felt like the air had been replaced by concrete. I looked at the 3 of them, my mother, my father, and the brother who had just effectively erased my existence. "Pack your things," my father repeated. He didn't say it with the heat of an argument. He said it with the cold finality of a judge reading a death sentence. "Where am I supposed to go?" I whispered, my voice cracking. I'm 14. I don't have anywhere else. You should have thought about that before you tried to hurt your brother, my mother said, her voice trembling as she tucked a stray hair behind Nathan's ear. We've tried everything, Meera. Therapy, discipline, taking away the door. Nothing works. You're a danger to this family. I didn't cry. Not then. A strange, icy numbness started at my toes and climbed up to my chest. It was the feeling of a heart turning into a stone to protect itself from breaking. The ride home was 15 minutes of pure, suffocating stillness. The Ohio fields slid by, brown and skeletal under a gray November sky. When we pulled into the driveway, the leaning mailbox looked like a broken soldier. Dad didn't even wait for me to get out. He went straight to the hall closet, grabbed my old duffel bag, and threw it onto my bed, the bed that sat in a room without a door. He began shoving my jeans, my hoodies, and my soccer cleats into the bag with a rhythmic, violent efficiency. Dad, please! I tried one last time, standing at the edge of the hallway. Ask the librarian again. Check the hall cameras. I was nowhere near those stairs. He zipped the bag shut with a sound like a serrated blade. I'm done listening to your stories, Meera. You're going to your grandmother's in Columbus for the duration of your suspension. And after that, well, we'll see if she can handle you, because we can't. Nathan stood in the shadows of the hallway where my door used to be. As my father pushed past me with the bag, Nathan caught my eye. He didn't say a word. He just tapped his jaw, the spot where the fake bruise was, and gave me a slow, mocking wink. That wink was the moment I realized my childhood was officially over. An hour later, the familiar blue Buick pulled into the driveway. Grandma Helen didn't get out right away. She sat in the car for a moment, her silhouette small but sturdy against the steering wheel. When she finally walked into the house, she didn't look at my parents first. She looked at me. She saw the duffel bag, she saw my red-rimmed eyes, and then she looked at the doorway where the hinges hung empty and jagged. "What is this?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Mother, it's for the best," my mom started, her hands fluttering nervously. "She's been violent. Nathan is terrified. We need a reset." Grandma Helen walked over to Nathan. She looked him up and down, her eyes narrowing behind her spectacles. Then she looked at my father. "You've lost your minds," she said, her voice vibrating with a steel I'd never heard before. "You've chosen a story over your own flesh and blood." "She's a liar, Mom!" my father shouted. "No," Grandma Helen said, grabbing my duffel bag with one hand and my arm with the other. "She's the only one in this house telling the truth, and since you're too blind to see it, she's coming with me, permanently." She didn't wait for them to argue. She marched me out to the Buick. As I sat in the passenger seat, buckling my belt with shaking fingers, I saw my parents standing on the porch. They looked like strangers. Nathan was behind them, his face unreadable now that his audience was gone. Grandma got in, started the engine, and patted my hand. The interior of the car smelled of lavender and old paper. "Seatbelt?" she asked softly. "Buckled," I choked out. "Good," she said, shifting into reverse. "Don't look back, Meera. There's nothing left for you in that house but ghosts. We're going to build you a life where the doors have locks and the words have weight." As we drove away, the house grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it was just a dark speck against the horizon. I didn't know then that I wouldn't step foot in that town for 15 years. I only knew that for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The apartment in Columbus sat above a small, quiet hardware store on Main Street. The stairs up were narrow and smelled of old pine and floor wax, a stark contrast to the scent of fried bacon and tension I had left behind. When Grandma Helen opened the door to her place, the air felt different. It felt still, safe. "This used to be my sewing room," Grandma said, pushing open a door at the end of the hallway. I stood in the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. It was small, with floral wallpaper that was slightly peeling at the corners, and a twin bed covered in a heavy hand-knitted quilt. But the thing that made my heart hammer against my ribs was the door. It was solid oak, with a brass handle and a small, functional bolt on the inside. "Go ahead," Grandma nudged me. "Try it." I walked in and turned the handle. The click of the latch was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I slid the bolt into place. For the first time in months, I was truly alone. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood, and finally, the tears I had been holding back since the principal's office came flooding out. I sobbed until my ribs ached, mourning the parents who didn't want me and the brother who had hunted me. When I finally came out, eyes swollen and red, Grandma was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili. The hummingbird calendar on the wall was marked with simple, peaceful things. Book club, 6 p.m. Dentist, Tuesday. Grocery store. "Hungry?" she asked, not looking up, giving me the space I needed to breathe. "A little," I whispered. Over dinner, she didn't ask me to defend myself. She didn't ask me to explain the bruises Nathan had faked or the rumors he had spread. She simply talked about the library down the street and the high school where she had already called to enroll me. "River Street High is different," she said, buttering a piece of cornbread. "Nobody knows your name there, Meera. Nobody knows the story. You get to be the author of the next chapter." The next Monday, I walked into River Street High wearing my softest sweatshirt and a pair of jeans that felt like armor. My stomach was a knot of nerves, waiting for the whispers to start, waiting for someone to growl or call me a monster. But as I moved through the halls, something miraculous happened. Nothing. In English class, a girl with a high ponytail named Jamila turned around and smiled. "Hey, you're new, right? I'm Jamila. Love your sneakers." "I'm Meera," I managed to say. "Cool name. Want to sit with us at lunch? We're mostly harmless," she joked. That afternoon, our teacher, Miss Patel, gave us a creative writing prompt. Write about a place where you feel invisible. I opened my notebook. Usually, I struggled with essays, but today the words felt like a dam breaking. I didn't write about being ignored. I wrote about the power of being unseen. I wrote about the wind, about the way it shapes the world without ever showing its face. I wrote about the silence of a room with a locked door. When I finished, Miss Patel walked by my desk. She stayed there for a long moment, reading over my shoulder. "You have a very strong voice, Meera. Don't ever let anyone quiet it." That night, I didn't go to sleep right away. I sat at the small desk in the sewing room and started a new notebook. On the first page, I didn't write a diary entry. I wrote a scene about a girl who could talk to shadows. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the problem child or the invisible twin. I was a writer, and in the world of my pages, I was the one who decided who was telling the truth. Years flowed by like a river finding its true course. I stopped checking my old phone for messages from my parents after the first 6 months of silence. Grandma Helen had helped me change my number, and with that, the cord was finally cut. In Columbus, I thrived in the quiet. I graduated from River Street High with honors, not because I was trying to compete with Nathan's ghost, but because I finally found subjects that spoke to me. I spent my afternoons shelving books at the local library, lost in the scent of aged paper and ink. Miss Patel's words stayed with me, and by the time I entered college, my notebooks were filled with stories of survival and strength. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through a journalism degree, refusing to ask my parents for a single cent. I became a freelancer, a digital nomad before the term was even popular. I wrote copy for tech startups, blog posts for travel agencies, and eventually deep dive articles for major magazines. By the time I was 29, I lived in a sun-drenched loft in downtown Columbus. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the windows overlooked the courthouse green. I had a passport full of stamps: Seattle, Austin, Lisbon, Vancouver. I wasn't the girl who had been thrown out anymore. I was a woman who had built a kingdom out of the scraps of her past. Grandma Helen still lived above the hardware store. Every Sunday, I'd bring her favorite pastries, and we'd sit on her fire escape, surrounded by pots of wild mint and rosemary. "You look solid, Meera," she said one evening, patting my hand, "like an oak tree that finally grew its own roots." "I feel solid, Grandma," I replied. And I did, until that Thursday night. I was sitting at my mahogany desk, finishing a piece for a lifestyle brand, when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code sent a chill down my spine. It was from my hometown. I hesitated, my heart doing that old frantic dance against my ribs. I picked up. "Meera?" The voice was older, thinner, but I knew it instantly. It was my mother. "Yes?" I said, my voice as flat as a desert floor. "Oh, thank God. Meera, honey, we saw you, your father and I. We saw that interview you did on the news about your writing career. You looked so professional, so successful." I didn't say thank you. I didn't say I missed her. I waited. "Listen," she continued, her voice trembling with a forced sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Ling, things have been difficult here. Your father's health isn't what it used to be. The house needs a new roof, and the medical bills are piling up. We're retired now, and Nathan is between jobs again." I closed my eyes, picturing the golden child sitting in that house, still living off the lies he'd told 15 years earlier. "And?" I asked. "Well," my father's voice suddenly joined the line, gruff and entitled. "We're family, Meera. You've clearly done very well for yourself. We thought, since you have so much, you could help us out. It's your duty as a daughter." I stood up and walked to my window. Below, the city was alive with lights and people who didn't know my story. "My duty?" I asked, a cold laugh escaping my throat. "You threw me out at 14. You believed a liar over your own daughter. You let me leave with a single bag and no door in my room. Where was your duty then?" "Meera, don't be bitter," my mother pleaded. "That was so long ago. We're asking for your help now. We need $50,000 for the renovations and the debt. To you, that's nothing." I looked at the framed photo on my desk. Me at my college graduation, standing next to Grandma Helen. "I have a condition," I said. "Anything," my mother cried. "I want a public apology, not a phone call. I want you to post on your social media, email every relative we have, and tell the truth. Admit that Nathan lied. Admit that you were wrong. Tell everyone exactly why you threw me out and that I was innocent the whole time. Only then will I even consider opening my checkbook." The silence on the other end was absolute. The silence on the other end of the line was so heavy I could almost hear the gears grinding in their heads. In that town, reputation was everything. My father's pride and my mother's perfect family image were the pillars of their existence. To admit they had been wrong, not just slightly off, but devastatingly, cruelly wrong, was like asking them to tear down their own house. "Meera, don't be ridiculous," my father's voice finally broke through, no longer coaxing but sharp with the old authority he used to wield. "That was 15 years ago. People have forgotten. Why would you want to dig up old dirt and embarrass your parents like this?" Because that dirt was my life, Dad, I said, my voice steady, honed by years of writing facts. You didn't just forget me, you erased me. You told the aunts, the uncles, and the neighbors that I was a troubled girl who had to be sent away for everyone's safety. I still have the emails you sent to Grandma Helen calling me a monster. We were stressed, my mother chirped in, her voice hitting a frantic high note. Nathan was so convincing. How are we to know? You were the parents. It was your job to know. Just then, I heard a scuffling sound on their end. A third voice cut in, deeper now, but with that same arrogant drawl I had memorized in the shadows of my doorless room. Hey, sis, Nathan said. He sounded like he was leaning back in a recliner, probably the same one my father used to occupy. Still holding a grudge? Look, Mom and Dad are old. They're stressed. They just need a little cushion. You've got the big city money now. Don't be a cliché and turn your back on your blood. Nathan, I said, and the name tasted like ash. How's the job hunt going? Or are you still between projects while you live in my old room? I could practically hear him bristling. I'm an entrepreneur, Meera. Things are just slow. But that's not the point. You're being selfish. You want a public apology? For what? For us being a family? I want the truth, Nathan. The truth about the bleach, the truth about the stairs, the truth about the bruises you gave yourself in the bathroom mirror while I was at soccer practice. There was a sharp intake of breath. For a second, the golden child faltered. He didn't know I had seen him that night. He didn't know I had been watching through the gap where my door used to be. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, his voice losing its oily sheen. I think you do. And here is my final offer. You have 24 hours to draft that apology and send it to the entire family list. If you don't, not only will I not send a single cent, but I will publish my own story. And I'm a very good writer, Nathan. I have the school records, the suspension letter, and Grandma Helen's testimony. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who the golden child really is. You wouldn't, my mother whispered. I already have the draft ready. I lied, though it wasn't really a lie, as the story had been living in my head for over a decade. 24 hours. Clock starts now. I hung up before they could respond. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't the shaking of a frightened child. It was the adrenaline of a woman who was finally closing a chapter. I walked over to my desk and looked at my bank balance on my laptop. $50,000 was a lot of money, but I had it. I had worked through holidays, through fevers, and through loneliness to save it. I wasn't going to give it away to buy back a family that never existed. I was going to use it to buy the one thing they had stolen from me: my name. The 24 hours felt like an eternity and a heartbeat all at once. I spent the morning at a coffee shop near the river, the hum of the espresso machine and the low chatter of strangers grounding me. Every few minutes, I'd glance at my phone. Silence. I expected the rage. I expected the bargaining. What I didn't expect was a message from a ghost. My phone pinged at noon. It wasn't my parents'. It was a message on a professional networking site from a name I hadn't seen in 15 years. Sarah Thompson. Meera, I saw your profile. I saw the interview you did last month. You look incredible. I don't know if you remember me, but we were best friends in sophomore year. I've felt sick about how things ended for years. I saw the email your parents sent out to the neighborhood association back then. I believed it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Sarah, the girl who had shared her headphones with me, the first person who had looked at me with pity instead of trust. Her apology was the first crack in the wall they had built around my reputation. Before I could reply, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email. The subject line was blank. I opened it. It was a CC'd message sent to a massive list of contacts, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even some of our old neighbors. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. To our family and friends. We are writing this to clarify some misunderstandings from years ago regarding our daughter, Meera. At the time, there were many tensions in our home, and we made decisions based on incomplete information. We now recognize that Meera was not responsible for the incidents that led to her leaving our home. We regret the pain this caused and hope to move forward as a family. The Shrivastava family. I read it once, then twice. It was cold. It was clinical. It was the absolute bare minimum they could do to get the money. They didn't even mention Nathan's name or his lies. They framed it as incomplete information, as if the truth had just been hiding in a drawer they forgot to check. But then my phone chimed again, a text from Nathan. There, they did it. Everyone's talking and Mom's crying because Aunt Lou called her a monster for throwing out a kid. You happy now? You've ruined their reputation. Now send the money. I have the bank details ready. We need it by Friday. I sat back, a slow, cold realization washing over me. They hadn't apologized because they were sorry. They had apologized because they were hungry. They were selling their pride to buy a new roof and pay off the golden child's debts. I thought about the girl in the room without a door. I thought about the $5 bills Grandma Helen used to slip me because she knew I had nothing. I began to type. Nathan, the apology was the condition for me to consider helping. I've considered it, and my answer is no. My thumb hovered over the send button. I knew the moment I hit it, the war would truly begin. They had admitted the truth publicly, and now they were going to get nothing in return. I hit send. The silence that followed my text lasted exactly 42 seconds. Then my phone didn't just buzz, it screamed. Call after call from my father, then my mother, then Nathan. I watched the screen light up, their names flashing like warning lights on a sinking ship. I didn't answer. I simply set the phone face down on the mahogany desk and watched the reflection of the city lights in my window. The next morning, the digital dam broke. Because they had sent that CC'd email to the entire extended family, the golden child facade wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. My inbox began to fill with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to since I was a child. Meera, I am so ashamed we didn't look closer back then. Your mother made it sound like you were dangerous. Aunt Lou. We always wondered why Helen took you in so suddenly. We should have asked. We are so sorry. Cousin Mark. But while the extended family was offering olive branches, the nuclear family was preparing for war. At 2 p.m., a notification popped up on my laptop. Nathan had posted a video on a popular social media platform. He was sitting in our old living room, the one with the sagging shelves and the faded wallpaper. He looked disheveled, his eyes red. I'm making this because my sister, Meera, is trying to destroy our parents, he began, his voice thick with practiced emotion. She blackmailed them. She told them she'd only help with their medical bills if they signed a confession for things that happened when we were kids. And now that they've done it, she's ghosted them. She's wealthy, she's successful, and she's watching our parents lose their home while she sits in her loft in Columbus. The comments section began to move at lightning speed. That's cold. Success doesn't give you the right to be a monster. Family is family, no matter what happened in the past. He was doing it again. He was flipping the script, turning my quest for the truth into an act of cruel ambition. He was using my success, the very thing I had bled for, as a weapon against me. But Nathan had forgotten one thing. I wasn't the scared 14-year-old girl anymore. I was a journalist. I knew how to document a trail. I went to my closet and pulled out a dusty plastic bin. Inside were the journals from my time at Grandma Helen's, but deeper down, tucked into the lining of the bin, was a small silver digital recorder I had bought with my first paycheck from the library. It contained the only recording I had ever made in that house, a recording from the night before I was kicked out. I had hidden it under the floorboard of my doorless room, hoping to catch Nathan in a lie. I had recorded him laughing in the hallway, telling his friends on the phone how easy it was to make Mom and Dad hate her. I plugged the old device into my laptop. The audio was grainy, hissing with the ghosts of 15 years ago, but the voice was unmistakable. "She's gone, man. I just had to hit myself a few times and tell Dad she pushed me. They'll believe anything I say. She's nothing." I felt a cold shiver trace my spine. I looked at the post button on my own professional page, where I had thousands of followers who respected my integrity. I didn't want to be the person who aired dirty laundry. I wanted to be the person who lived in the light. But Nathan was trying to pull me back into the dark room without a door. I uploaded the audio file. I attached the scanned copy of the missing door disciplinary letter my school sent home. And finally, I attached the bank statement showing that I had, in fact, offered to pay, but only if the truth was told. I typed a single sentence. "The truth isn't blackmail. It's the price of a clear conscience." The digital world doesn't just listen, it echoes. Within 3 hours, the grainy, hissing recording of a teenage Nathan bragging about his deception had been shared thousands of times. The contrast was too sharp to ignore. On one side, a polished video of a grown man playing the victim. On the other, the ghostly, arrogant voice of the boy who had masterminded a family's destruction. The comments section on Nathan's video turned into a battlefield. People who had initially sided with him began to delete their messages. The golden child was being exposed, not by my words, but by his own. I turned off my phone. I couldn't look at the notifications anymore. I went to the kitchen and made a cup of tea, the steam rising in the quiet of my loft. I felt lighter, but it was the lightness of a hollow bone, strong but empty. A sharp, rhythmic knocking at my heavy oak front door broke the silence. My heart did a slow, painful roll in my chest. No one came to my loft without calling first. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing in the hallway, illuminated by the dim, fluorescent light of the corridor, was my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her coat was buttoned wrong, and she was clutching a cheap vinyl handbag as if it were a life preserver. She looked like a woman who had spent the last 24 hours realizing that the foundation of her life was made of sand. I opened the door, but I didn't step back to let her in. I stood in the frame, my hand firm on the handle. "Meera," she whispered. Her eyes were red-rimmed, the skin around them papery and thin. "Please, we have to talk." "I think we've said everything, Mom," I said. My voice was calm, which surprised me. I expected to feel rage, but all I felt was a profound, weary distance. "The neighbors, they're staring, Meera. My father won't leave the bedroom. He's humiliated. And Nathan? Nathan is gone. He took the car and left this morning after that audio came out. He said it was our fault for sending the email in the first place." I leaned against the doorframe. "He's still blaming everyone else, even now." "I didn't know, Meera," she sobbed, burying her face in a tissue. "I swear I didn't know he said those things on the phone. I thought you were the one hurting us. I thought I was protecting my family." "You weren't protecting a family, Mom," I said, stepping slightly closer. "You were protecting an image. You liked the idea of a golden son and a troubled daughter. It made sense to you. It was easier than looking at the truth." She looked up at me, her face twisting with a sudden, desperate hope. We can fix it. I'll tell everyone. I'll go on the news if I have to. Just, please, help us with the house. My father's heart, he can't take the stress of moving. If we lose the house, we have nothing." I looked at her, the woman who had watched my bedroom door be ripped off its hinges, and said nothing. I looked at the woman who hadn't called me on my 16th birthday, my 18th, or my college graduation. "I'm not going to give you $50,000, Mom." She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "But," I continued, "I talked to Grandma Helen this morning. She's agreed to let you and Dad move into the small cottage on her property in the countryside. It's safe, it's clean, and the taxes are paid. I will cover your medical insurance and your groceries for as long as you live." "The cottage?" she stammered. "But the house on the hill, our things, our reputation in town." "The house is gone, Mom. The debt is too high, and I won't pay for Nathan's mistakes anymore. You have a choice. You can stay in that town and drown in the reputation you built on lies, or you can go to the country and live a quiet life where the truth is finally out in the open." She looked past me into my beautiful, sun-drenched loft, a home built on honesty and hard work. For a second, I saw a flicker of the mother I wished I'd had, a woman who might have said, "I'm proud of you," but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the hollow look of someone who had lost their last gamble. "I have to talk to your father," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Do that. The offer is on the table until Sunday. After that, I'm closing the book." I closed the door. I didn't wait for her to leave. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened a new document on my computer. I typed 3 words at the top of the page: "The final chapter." The deadline passed on Sunday with a silence that felt like a long-awaited exhale. My mother didn't call, and my father didn't send a fiery email. Instead, I received a simple text from Grandma Helen. "They're packing. The Buick is full. I'll see them by Tuesday." I sat on my balcony that evening, watching the sunset paint the Columbus skyline in shades of bruised purple and burnt orange. I thought about the house on the hill, the leaning mailbox, the smell of bacon, and the empty hinges on my bedroom door. It was being sold to a young couple who would likely paint over the scars and fill the rooms with their own laughter. The golden child had vanished into the wind, chasing a new lie in a new city, leaving his parents to face the quiet reality of their own making. A week later, I drove out to Grandma Helen's. The countryside was lush and green, the air smelling of damp earth and blooming clover. I pulled up to the small white cottage at the edge of her property. It was modest, with a wraparound porch and a single oak tree standing guard in the yard. My father was sitting in a rocking chair on the porch. He looked older, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of his own pride had finally crushed him. When he saw my car, he didn't stand up, he didn't wave, but as I walked up the steps, he looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in 15 years. "The roof doesn't leak," he said, his voice gravelly. It's a good house, Meera." "It is, Dad," I replied, leaning against the railing. "I saw your book," he whispered, gesturing to the coffee table where a copy of my latest collection of essays sat. "I read the one about the wind, about how it shapes things." He didn't say he was sorry, he didn't say I was right, but in that moment, seeing my words in his hands, I realized I didn't need him to. I had already given myself the validation I had spent my childhood begging for. I was the architect of my own life, and the foundation was solid. My mother came out with a tray of lemonade, her movements hesitant. She set it down and looked at the two of us. The tension wasn't gone, it would never be entirely gone, but the lie was dead, and in its place was a fragile, honest beginning. "Will you stay for dinner, Meera?" she asked, her voice small. I made chili. Helen said you used to like it. I looked at the rolling hills and the setting sun. I thought about my loft and the city, my career and the friends who had become my real family. Then I looked at the two broken people in front of me. Just for an hour, I said, sitting down in the chair next to my father. I have a deadline tomorrow. As the stars began to poke through the darkening sky, the echo of truth finally stopped bouncing off the walls. The story of the girl without a door was over. I wasn't the victim anymore, and I wasn't the judge. I was just Meera. I reached out and took a sip of the lemonade. It was tart, a little sharp, but mostly it was refreshing. The door was closed, the light was on, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.